Hello, and welcome to Now What with Ms. Jen. We're going to share practical ideas for your trauma-sensitive classroom. I am Ms. Jen Alexander, your trauma-informed educator, author, consultant, and trainer. Here in the studio with us today, we have Kelsey Schmitz and Traci Ludwig. We are so glad that you're both with us. Traci is a therapist, a trauma-informed therapist to be specific. She specializes in working with people who have experienced trauma. She's also a trauma-sensitive yoga expert and combines these practices of gentle movement with her work with clients. Traci, we are so glad you're here with us tonight. Of course, Kelsey is on our crew at Ms. Jen Consulting, and we're looking forward to a conversation together and with engagement from any of you who are joining us live. And if you're catching us on the replay, we're glad you're here for that too. As we start out today, what we would like to do is invite you to think about a movement that goes with how you've been doing lately. For me, I think I would choose push-ups because I feel like I've been doing quite a bit of heavy lifting in terms of creating content and getting ready for some presentations that are coming up. Kelsey, how about you? What's a movement that goes with how you're doing?
I was thinking about this. I think I'm jumping jacks. I feel like there's been a lot of big and exciting things happening. So big energy coming out, but then pull it together to kind of focus on our different projects that we have working on. So the out and in and out and in. And just when we feel like we've got it together, it goes out again. So
lots of changes happen in your world, huh? Traci, how about you?
Well, I would have to say definitely, I think sort of a circular spinning motion, only because my day has just been filled with a lot of different movement throughout the day, and kind of create some head spinning for me going on. So that's how my day has been, but I'm definitely feeling much more settled as I'm with you and excited about being here. So
well, we're so glad that you're with us. And we look forward to talking more about this idea of settling and what that really means in our bodies. And I know we're going to get into that tonight, but I think first we should do our hats off to educators. What do you think, Kelsey?
Yes, this is our silly little segment that we call Hats Off to Educators. We created this YouTube Live, which you might be listening to or you might be watching for you as educators. And so we just wanted to take a minute to say hats off to you and put our silly hats on and just kind of rock out for a minute. Okay, here's our silly hats. Thank you for joining us today.
We are so glad that you're with us. And I think it's also important to acknowledge everything that's happening in our nation and world right now. It's a lot for everyone to navigate. And for educators, there's so much that you're holding, both in terms of your responsibilities at school, but also how to hold space for everything. All of our team members, youth, and families are going through right now too. So definitely hats off to you for the work that you do every single day. It matters. It matters so much. Big behaviors at school. Everybody's got them. And in our last live, we introduced you to some hand signals that you can use to communicate about brain and nervous states with your kids as a way to promote not only regulation, but how we can really be present for one another in a regulating way. Tonight, we have a question from a viewer, a friend of ours at the Institute of Psychology in Canada. Tammy sent us a question, and we're going to center our conversations tonight around our answer to her question. So let's take a listen. It'll let me. I might have to play it from over here for some reason. Let me do that. I think we'll just be able to listen to it.
Jen, I can't hear you.
Oh. Thank you for letting me know that. You know what? I am just going to paraphrase then what Tammy's question is. For some reason, it's not loading here to play, and you're not hearing it, so that's not helpful. Tammy is sharing about how youth who've experienced trauma may dysregulate, and that's true. That even with a focus on brain and nervous system states co-regulating in the classroom, it doesn't mean that children or adolescents won't still sometimes flip their lids, so to speak. And what she's asking a question about is, how do we handle that in a way that's trauma-informed, understanding that we don't want to be using restraint and seclusion. It can be unsafe, both in a very real physiological way, also a psychological way. And at the same time, how do we keep everybody safe during these crises, but also how do we reestablish safety afterwards with the entire group? And that's basically what her question is about, wanting to honor the needs of children and teens who may escalate to that degree, as well as honoring the needs of everyone else, including adults in those classroom and school spaces. And I think in my first response to that, I just want to acknowledge the realities of this and how Tammy is right that many educators are concerned about this issue of safety. And what we want to encourage you to do first and foremost is to follow the policies and laws of your area, but particularly with your board, your district, your school, and to follow the protocols that you have in place for your teams when actions may become unsafe. From there, we encourage you to have a focus on de-escalating situations and have teams who are dedicated to doing that, but also looking at how we can prevent those escalations, because that's really the heart of trauma-informed work. And I think where we want to focus tonight is the role of the educator or educators in that classroom that they play, that we have in those moments and after them are what really matter in terms of what educators do and how they lead the group plays a critical role in terms of how we reestablish real and felt safety with everyone in that classroom. So Traci, I'm wondering if you would like to speak to that as we get going here.
Sure. I think that is important. So educator needing to put out there to the other kids that we can feel safe, to the educator kind of modeling safety, and then maybe also tuning in to their students. What do we need? What can we do to feel safe in our bodies? And that is where I think a lot of the trauma sensitive movements can come in. What can we do to help our kids feel more centered, grounded, and in their bodies? So that's where I would go with it. I think it's definitely, the teacher really taking over and helping promote the safety. And then hopefully afterwards being sensitive too for the teacher's needs and taking care of them.
Yes, and I kind of almost think of it in terms of a 4-step process, if you will, that once the physical safety of that moment has been tended to, that we can really focus on with the entire group, whether that individual is who may have escalated is in the room or not. Oftentimes they may not be at that point, but to acknowledge with the group what happened, to speak truth about that. Doesn't mean you have to give lots of details about it, but just to acknowledge, something just happened that has me kind of stirred up in my body. You might be experiencing that too. And from my kind of standpoint as a trauma sensitive expert for educators is to encourage you as the educator to take a stance of being a nurturing protector at that point. So you're taking charge, you're going to lead, and you're going to do it from a very nurturing, caring, compassionate place that really says to all the kids, I've got you. I've got you. I know what to do to help students in this situation, and I know what to do to support you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And from there, we can focus a bit on feelings and needs. And like you said, do something in terms of a movement that can help folks tend to the needs that might be coming up in their body. So with that in mind, I want to ask you, Traci, is yoga good for all kids at school? Would this be a time when yoga might be utilized in addition to other times? We know there's some research that supports the positive effects of yoga. Is it good for all kids at school?
Yeah. So I think my immediate response for many might be, well, of course, because it's yoga. And we know, like you said, lots of research says it does good things for us. And especially if it's gentle yoga, why not? However, I would definitely say that not all traditional yoga as we think about it is actually appropriate for, keyword, all kids, especially kids that have had the misfortune of trauma. What we know for sure is that some yoga or any type of movements, if we're not careful, can be re-traumatizing. So therefore, a safer, predictable movement modality, definitely coming from a trauma lens, is much more suitable.
So with that in mind, what makes trauma-sensitive movements different from yoga?
Yeah. Well, let me start first by saying that we know oftentimes that trauma happens at the mercy of someone or something else, taking away our power or our choice. So that's the key underpinning of the work that we've been doing. That's the first kind of key difference. We know that. And so with trauma sensitive movements, it does allow for choice. It's given back to the kiddo, for the kiddo to decide if this is something that they would like to do. It's done with imitational language, not coercive or directional language. And it's also, we give the kiddo 1 to 3 options about what they would like to do with their movement. So that encourages choice and promotes empowerment. And then last, there's a big focus on helping kiddos notice what they're feeling or what they're sensing with the movement. So it brings them to this present moment experience. What is happening right now? Not what happened 2 minutes ago, not what's going to happen 2 minutes from now, but in that very moment, which we know connects them to feeling more emotional regulated. They're in that moment, empowering that kid again to take action for themselves. Whereas we know, depending on the trauma, they may never have that opportunity to do.
That's such an important point, because we think about a lot of the things that we lead in the classroom is the educator leading, the educator giving students directions to follow. And you're really hitting such an important point about how, a command, if you will, even if it doesn't seem commanding, it's still a direction that we give people, and we're telling them what to do with their bodies. For someone who's experienced trauma, even if it's big stress in the moment of the classroom where they just felt like they lost control of what was going on and may have some emotional, but also stirred up feelings in their body, or shut down ones for that matter, in relation to that, for them to be told what to do at that moment takes away their agency. And what you're really focusing on is how important it is for them to feel in control and to make choices and to trust the wisdom of their own bodies and selves. That's pretty powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in terms of how we might use trauma-sensitive movements after a crisis in the classroom, it makes me wonder too, and I know from writing and working with you, Traci, that there are other times that trauma-sensitive movements can be really helpful in the classroom. Can you kind of share with us some other kind of times that educators might think about using these invitational kinds of ways of moving?
Certainly. So we know that it doesn't have to just be when there's to connect it to that question, like even before a big event or after an event, but it could be at certain, times of the day, the bringing the children all together, it's the start of the day. Maybe there's some hustle and bustle around. So we want to just start them in the learning coming from a more settled and centered place. So maybe we start at the beginning of the day, or maybe we do it after lunch, because we might feel more of that low energy. Or maybe we need it after recess when they come in, they're a little bit charged up yet from recess. So we want to, introduce something a little bit more grounding and settling then. So it's really, as teachers, learning your nervous system messaging, but then also kind of tuning into the children's, right, reading off into the room. What are their little nervous systems all communicating together and broadcasting? So how can I pull on the movements that we're teaching to just meet the needs of what's happening in front of me with their energy or lack thereof?
Definitely. And you're talking about really two different ways of using the movements. You're talking about in a planful way, like making it part of the rhythm of your day. Like at this transition time is an opportunity to engage in trauma sensitive movement, but you're also talking about it in response to what folks might be reading in the room, so to speak. Yeah. And I'm going to guess that you're not just thinking about reading what the youth need, but also what you as an educator might need. And to be able to say to your group, I'm feeling kind of stirred up right now. I'm feeling the need for some movement that I get to make choices about. I'm going to offer an invitation for you to join me. What a powerful way to model what these practices can be like in the classroom.
Exactly.
And one other thought I had with that is that in light of kind of everything that's happening in our nation at this time, to think about how conversations that might become conflicted or heated as we're talking about social justice issues or historical events or things that are happening now that might remind folks of historical experiences that even their loved ones perhaps have experienced and been traumatized by, can stir up a lot of feelings in the present. So even with a group of older students who might be getting dysregulated because of a conversation in your learning environment, you can bring it in at that time too.
Yeah.
So Traci, could you teach us some trauma-sensitive movements now that folks could start using in their classrooms right away?
I would be happy to. So what I would like to do then, if you'd like to join me, is just find yourself in a comfortable seated chair, however it is. I like to just let my feet just sort of just be where they are. They're kind of dangling, lightly touching the floor. And my posture is somewhat relaxed. So just really looking for whatever your version of comfort might be in this moment. And then I invite you to, I'm just going to take my fingertips and just bringing them to the tops of my shoulders here, and just to kind of create a little sampling for you. I refer to these as elbow circles. And so if you would like, you can join me, just placing as our fingers are here. Taking one option might be just making some rotations. I'm choosing to take my elbows forward. So I'm just drawing circles in the air, going in a forward direction. And so something just to pay attention to, that you're in charge, you're experimenting. Maybe your circular movements. Notice if they're big or expansive, or if you're choosing to make, you can even make smaller, kind of closer movements. Either are fine. You're also in control of the speed of those movements. You might even notice how it feels a little different if you change the speed. What do you notice? And then another option, just a possibility you could try, is then reversing those circles. So I'm going backwards with my circles. And what might you notice here? Any change in sensation? And then when you're finished there, you can go ahead, maybe bringing the hands to your lap and just allow the shoulders to just sort of fall, creating that space. Maybe you've created a little more space between the shoulders and the ears, if that's possible. If not, that's okay. And just taking a moment to tune in again to what you might notice. So that is just one quick, easy sample that I like to show folks, because I think for the most part it's fairly doable, and we can accommodate through the guide. We've got different options to meet different needs for kiddos. So I hope that that kind of got you behind that trauma sensitive movement lens.
Thank you so much for that. And I definitely feel like I got a little more space between my, in my neck here, and just felt my energy kind of come down. I don't know, Traci, is there anything you want to share about what you noticed, or Kelsey?
I thought it was interesting, just the invitation to pay attention to my posture. And, I put my 2 feet on the ground rather than I was kind of sitting at an angle, and how even just the invitation to adjust my posture just a little bit felt a little bit grounding before we even started the movement itself. And so I think how quickly that can change the energy in the room just by asking kids to kind of tune into that could make a big difference.
And hopefully you heard the words, I invite you, or a possibility, an experiment, if you'd like. So that's all different language. As Jen mentioned throughout the day, they're filled with instructions and directions as they need to be in a classroom. I understand. But this just allows for, even if it's 2 minutes, for them just to be in full control and have choice. So those words, that invitational language, helps promote choice. So hopefully you got to hear that.
And that you're not doing it wrong. When I kind of switched to doing it backwards, and I invite you to do this. It's okay if you do this. I immediately was like, oh, okay, I have the option to do that. And that kind of gave some freedom in permission there. I really liked that.
Good.
And I hope the other thing that folks notice who are watching is that these movements don't have to be complicated and complex, that they're gentle, they're relatively simple, and anybody can do this who wants to. And I think Traci, that's one of the things I have so appreciated about working with you, is that I think there are educators who have considered learning about yoga, but may feel a little intimidated about how to get started, and the thought of leading a group of people. It's one thing to try it, and another thing to lead learners in it. And you have a way of making it very accessible to people. And I love that about your work and about the work that we've done together. So let's talk about that a little bit here. Just as a review, one of the things that Traci's talking about is that trauma sensitive movements are different from yoga because they're empowering instead of prescribed. personal choice and agency are key. And again, you heard that in the language that she was using as she guided us to make decisions about how we wanted to move. One of the wonderful things about trauma sensitive movement is that it can be helpful to little ones all the way up to big kids. We shared this photo with permission from some learners who learned trauma sensitive movements with us. They and their parents wanted to be part of educating others. So thank you to them and to others who joined us too. But this is definitely something that is applicable to people of all ages, and the idea that they get to make their own choices helps them make it be a fit for themselves. We have things to help you get started with trauma sensitive movements. In fact, I have a brand new blog post up today in February of 2025 at msjenalexander.com. And it's all about what you can do in the classroom after a student flips their lid. And it goes through those 4 steps of acknowledging what happened, ensuring you're being a nurturing protector, focusing a bit on feelings and needs, and then doing a regulating brain break, such as engaging in trauma sensitive movement, to help folks be ready to transition into what's coming next. The elbow circles are written up in directions for you, something you can download on the blog. And there are more suggestions in the blog that you can access too. The other thing that I want to highlight for us today is that Traci and I wrote a quick guide. It's called Trauma Sensitive Movements for the Classroom. And in it, you'll find explanations of what trauma sensitive movements are. They're tied to regulation, notes on that regulating, but also invitational language, the kinds of things you'll need. There are downloads, and importantly, there's the Take 5 approach that we go into there too.
Jen, do you mind telling them just a little bit about that Take 5 approach? It's one of my favorites.
Absolutely. So in really the priority of wanting to make this really doable for every educator, Traci has created 5 movements in 5 minutes that you can lead with your group. And they're organized in terms of kind of the goal you might be after and your group might be after the moment. So for instance, there are 5 movements that help folks get grounded. And of course, there's lots of options within them. And the language is here. We have photos as well as the language that you could use in guiding folks through the movements. There's a whole Take 5 approach for getting connected or getting energized, getting settled, and getting focused. And I just can't wait for folks to really try this out. That it's a quick guide. It's colorful and it's in your hands, and it's really all you need to lead these movements. And of course, you can create other ones from there once you're practiced in this language too. Traci, anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's perfect. The Take 5, it makes it simple, breaks it down, very accessible, very easy, and hopefully not intimidating. You know, the word yoga can be intimidating too. So we stay away from that. This is just, these are simple movements that, yes, everyone can do, most everyone.
Mm-hmm. And if not, they can modify them in a way that works for them too, or make a different choice that's best for them. There's just such power in being able to be in our bodies and make a choice that's best for us.
And having the choice to not do it, right, is also a choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, here is a segment that we like to call a few of my favorite things. So I just want to show you a few things that I like to use in the classroom in relation to trauma sensitive movement. Of course, the quick guide is one of my favorite things, but I also wanted to bring along a Hoberman spear today. You don't have to use this with trauma sensitive movements, though you can. One of the things that I love to talk about with kids in relation to the Hoberman spear, but even educators as adults too, is that when we are dysregulated and we're experiencing perhaps a trauma response, it can feel like we are losing control, and we can get kind of stuck, if you will, in that response. And sometimes if we're experiencing that, or one of our learners is experiencing that, we can want to kind of push against that, or try to move somebody to a different spot. And what ends up happening is that we kind of push on it, and there's this kind of pushing back, if you will. And it's one of the lessons that could come from the Hoverman Spear, is that when we're gentle and we just hold space, is when it tends to move and change. Again, trusting the process, trusting that other human to know what is best for themselves in that moment, is powerful, and the heart of trauma informed care. The other thing I want to show is my little stuffy Winifred the whistle pig here, otherwise known as a groundhog. And I like to use her when doing critter breathing with kids. This can be connected to trauma sensitive movement, though it doesn't have to be. But you can invite youth to lay down, if they want to, on the floor, and put a little critter, a stuffy, on their belly. And if belly breathing is helpful to them, it's not helpful to everybody, but if it is helpful to them, they can breathe and try to move the little critter up and down as they breathe, so that they're breathing from their diaphragm and engaging in that belly breathing. So that's another kind of idea that you can try in your classroom, critter breathing. I hope you will consider giving some of those things a try. Kelsey, how about you talk to us a little bit about, for our viewers and our listeners, now what? They've learned about trauma-sensitive movements. They've heard how we use it, some suggestions we have. What do you suggest that their next steps be?
Next steps for you. I definitely take the time to rewatch this live, pause at the places, take notes. We invite you to read and share Miss Jen's blog post. Remember, we've got free resources in there for you every month that go with our live. And try the elbow circles at school, at your desk, at work. Invite students or coworkers to give that movement a try as well, and see if it's a fit. That's part of this, is trying to see what works, what doesn't, and go from there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Also, be ready to join us in March, on Monday, March 10, for our next Now What with Ms. Jen. Anxiety's on the rise. We know that. Now what? We'll be joined by a special guest, and we're going to talk about why anxiety might be on the rise and what you can do about it in your classroom and school spaces as a trauma sensitive educator. Don't miss it. It'll be a great one. We hope you can join us there. I also want to talk with you a little bit about what's on my plate coming up. It is a busy rest of the month for me. I will be at the Attachment and Trauma Network Conference in Atlanta on Monday, February 17th. Very excited for that. We'll be doing 2 presentations and a showcase. Plus, Kelsey will be there along with Jessica from our crew in the exhibit hall, available to speak with you about our work with educators in schools. So if you're there, please stop by and connect with us. We would love to see you face to face. On February 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be facilitating a webinar with Brooks Publishing. It's all about what we can do school-wide to address big behaviors. And this is particularly for school leaders, think administrators, coaches, other educators who are leaders in your building or district, thinking through how to make trauma-informed change system-wide. Good stuff, focusing on interventions that are key for not only responding to those unsafe actions, but what can we do to prevent them? And then again, like already mentioned, we have our live again on day 10 in the month of March at 5:30 p.m. Central, and that topic is all about anxiety.
Thank you for joining us tonight. It was so great last month to hear from some of our educators that we've worked with that were able to hop on during the live, or they watched the replay, or they listened to it as a podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you would like to send to some support or buy someone a tea, we have a Venmo here. And we have a Spill the Tea challenge that we did last month and we're doing again this month. And so you will see a post up on Miss Jen's Instagram inviting you to have some participation, and we will draw a lucky winner and make somebody's day, because it makes our day when we get to enjoy tea from somewhere.
Thanks, Kelsey, and so much that you do behind the scenes to make things like that work. So I appreciate you making sure that post is up and responding to folks and helping our winner get their tea too. Also, a big thank you to Traci Ludwig for being with us this evening and for writing with me. I'm proud of our work on that quick guide, and it's exciting to hear the difference that it's making in classrooms across the world. So thank you so much for being here.
You bet. Loved it.
All right, as we sign off today, we would love to know what's one word that you that goes with something you learned in this live or something that you're taking with you. I think my word tonight is choice, just thinking about the power of choice. How about you, Kelsey? Do you have a word?
Well, I was thinking choice.
We picked the same one.
But I just like the option to opt in or opt out. It feels powerful.
Yeah. Traci, do you want to share a word?
No, I'm going to use the word connection. So it was nice to really connect with both you and Kelsey tonight in doing just the work that the three of us are very passionate about. I don't get to do this every day. So it's just fun and it's invigorating to just bring this back out there hopefully to get in the hands of the people that really truly need it the most. So this is a way to connect. I'm feeling it.
And Traci, earlier you said something that really resonated with me. We're sharing resources out to you, but you made a comment about something that we all have available to us at any moment in time. Would you mind repeating that? I loved it.
Oh, sure. I think it was, it stemmed off of kind of our favorite things. And sometimes, if you have that in your classroom and I don't always have things at my disposal, and I feel like that's okay, that the work that I do, I've been taught that really we have everything we need and our body is all that we need. So the work of the movements, the language around it, it's just really not having to really overthink and have to have all sorts of things in your classroom when really it just comes back down to basics sometimes. And for me, it's just really basics are just right in the body. If all else fails and I kind of don't know what to do sometimes, I just bring it back because I've got everything I need.
Your body is all you need. Those are powerful words. Powerful words. Thank you, Traci, for sharing them. And thank you, Kelsey, for taking us back to that after we had chatted about it before we went live this evening. Again, thank you all for being here live or catching us on the replay. We appreciate you and the work that you do. Please take good care.